What's good, YouTube? So, today we're going to be talking about this 125 player list that the Athletic put out. Now, there's one thing that I want to preface before we get into this. There's really no criteria that I've seen from this list. I've seen it like 2 times at least because I've watched 2 recordings, but that's not the point. The point is, I think that they had a criteria of how good they were this season or how good they were in conjunction with last season. But the problem with that is, and we're going to see it with some of the players that are on this list, there's really just no consistency of whether or not which player is better than which. Because when we see that some players have taken a really good jump, like Ja Morant, he's obviously made so much jumps into whether or not which tier he's in. That's fair. But as we're gonna see with a guy like Darius Garland, the tier he's in doesn't make sense compared to the tier that Ja's in. Now, I'm not saying that those two players are really relative in terms of how good they are. I think that Ja Morant is still a tier two above him. But with the jumps that both of them made, it makes no sense as to why one jumped way higher than the other, despite them having similar jumps into their game. So, let's get into it because also one more thing, having a top 25 play, 125 player is absolutely ludicrous because there's no consistency of whether or not you could place one player above this guy while another player is placed above that guy, And I think we're going to see a bunch of that in this video. Now, let's get started. The only problem that I have with tier 1, besides Jokic being above Giannis, which is pretty much just a nitpick at this point, they're tier 1, they're 1A and 1B. The rest are just there. Maybe Steph Curry's 2 or 3 by that standard, but the rest are just there. Kevin Durant should not be that much ahead of Luka Doncic and Joel Embiid considering how big they were the last 2 seasons. Joel Embiid has put up MVP numbers the last 2 seasons. And I know Kevin Durant did that, but over a stretch of the sample size, Kevin Durant just has not been healthy at all. He's had multiple months of just being injured. So we just need to take that into consideration, considering that we're comparing him to Joel Embiid, someone who's known to not be healthy. So that's just a bigger problem that Kevin Durant, especially compared to Luka Doncic, who may just outright be a better player than Kevin Durant. Why is he just that much lower than him? I think that you combine these 2 tiers and then just bump everyone else up. But besides that, I don't think I really have anything wrong with tier 1. And as we're going to talk about in the tier 2, my problems start to settle in with whether or not some players should be above others. And you can even say the same thing with Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard probably shouldn't be on this list because he just hasn't played touched the basketball this whole season. Jimmy Butler and Tatum are good, what they are. So is Trey and Ja, even though they could probably maybe be bumped up. You never know. James Harden and Anthony Davis are over here, but Damian Lillard is over here. Honestly, he's at the bottom of the bottom. So you gotta look at this and say one thing. Do you think that the gap between James Harden and Anthony Davis was that big, especially comparing them to Damian Lillard, who had similar problems this year? They all were injured. They all missed time. It's just that Damian Lillard probably missed the most time, probably by far. And the brand of basketball that he was playing while he was injured was probably the worst. And it may not be that close. But it still begs the question, should James Harden be this high? And my answer to that is no. There's just no way you can look at me in the eyes and tell me this dude James Harden is not much better than Dame. Honestly, if we look at all of this, I don't think James Harden is better than a player over here. Same with Anthony Davis. And Anthony Davis is a whole string of worms that I'm not going to touch, especially even on my own top 20 players list. I considered that Anthony Davis is just a player that it's hard to rank right now because I'm not sure which anomaly season he had, the last 2 seasons or his 2020 season. There's just no consistency and any of that. Also, shout out to Aiden23 for doing this because I'm not about to buy an athletics subscription. But this is probably where I have some of my most problems. We're gonna get to some of the worst rankings on this list, especially in the next one. And I know I'm gonna be called a hater for what I'm about to say, but I gotta say it. But before we get into that, this is fine, I guess. But Kyrie should be bumped up. DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine should be bumped up way higher if we're just counting this season. Pascal should also be bumped up to this tier. Shea is fine. Draymond is fine, actually. I was thinking about it, but I think I like where he is placed. Even though he's probably a player that you could bump down. Could. I'm not saying you would. But when we think about it like this, Bam Adebayo, I think, is probably the best player over here that should be here. And Kyrie should just be bumped up. Same with these two. All three of those guys should be bumped up to tier 2 at least. Probably 2C. Especially if we're just saying this season. But this is where I get to my problem. You see the top of the tier 3C. You want to know something about these guys? They ain't touched the basketball this whole fucking season. Excuse my French. But these guys haven't touched the basketball. Same with Jamal Murray. Excuse me. He hasn't touched one this whole season. Why is Cat this low when some of these players just haven't played basketball? It's just mind-boggling to me why, you put some of these guys in front of them while they're injured. And we just don't know what they're going to look like. So, someone like Bradley Beal, he's been injured throughout this whole season, and he just hasn't been playing the level of ball that we think he is, or he should be playing. So, I think that's very weird. And even with that, we're not going to say that Zion Williamson and CJ McCollum are the same tier of player. Just asinine. I think we're just getting too caught up in the playoffs with Karl-Anthony Towns because I think that they just had a really good matchup against him. But I do want to see him next to Rudy Gobert, who is a tier 2B player, I believe. No, he's tier C. Excuse me. But this is probably the ranking I'm looking at the most as, what are we doing here? And I know I'm probably going to be called a hater for this. I'm probably going to be called a bunch of words. But the thing just has to be said right now. Why do we think that Klay Thompson is this high? I just want to know. Even if we were talking about peak Klay Thompson. Well, if we're talking about peak Klay Thompson, he's definitely above CJ McCollum. But, like, the other guys over here, probably starting from, like, Karl-Anthony Towns, I don't think he's better than any of these guys. Maybe Jrue Holiday. Maybe. But we're not even talking about peak Klay Thompson. We're talking about just injured Klay Thompson. And we're talking about this guy after the Achilles and ACL injury. And we're going to say that this guy, who's probably just a catch-and-shoot player at this point, who can maybe go off the dribble sometimes, is better than a guy like Darius Garland. And this is kind of what I'm talking about when the jump of Darius Garland and John Morant were both very good, but this guy is much worse for some reason in terms of how good he is on this tier list. Darius Garland should at least be around here, around this level. In my opinion, I think he's around here. I think he's comfortably better than LaMelo Ball, especially since they put up almost the same stats, and LaMelo Ball is not nearly as good of a creator as Darius Garland, and he's probably not that much better of a shooter. If not, he's probably not a better shooter at all. So it's crazy to me to think that LaMelo Ball is just that much better than Darius Garland to warrant another tier between those two. And if we're talking about or Shy, I think, I don't think that the gap between him and Darius is really that big, if at all. Also, you could probably talk me into moving Donovan Mitchell up. The only reason why I'm kind of down on him is because I don't really like his scoring, if that makes sense. Well, I do. The problem with him is he's just a cone. But on the right defense, You can get away with that. Like the Miami Heat, who should probably trade for him. But there was like a report that said that they had Tyler Hero and Donovan Mitchell in the same tier or something like that. Something weird. But that's not the point. Jarrett Allen and Darius Garland should be way up, especially if we're comparing them to Evan Mobley. These guys are probably still a tier ahead of Evan Mobley, as much as I love him. Pause. Well, actually, no. Let me not say that. I do like Evan Mobley's game so much. And I need him to really take the next step next year, because I think that if he does, he's probably going to be around maybe here. But that's just me just speculating at that point. Getting back to the topic, Klay Thompson is just not better than Darius Garland, DeJounte Murray, maybe Fred VanVleet, Jared Allen, Mark Smart, maybe DeAndre Ayton. Definitely not. Brandon Ingram is better than CJ McCollum, and y'all can fight me on that, bro. Like y'all can fight me on that. But I think that if I were to move Klay Thompson, I think that this whole thing is just way too big. He's going below OG Anunoby, and Scotty Barnes is going to get moved up around where Evan Mobley is. And this is essentially the end of it. And I don't really care about most of this stuff, except for the fact that De'Aaron Fox is worse than most of these players, according to this. He's worse than Kyle Lowry, Jordan Poole, Aaron Gordon. Bro, if you put De'Aaron Fox on the Nuggets, you put De'Aaron Fox on the Heat, all I'm saying is there's a good chance that those teams don't get bounced in the first round. But that's just me. Or the Warriors don't get bounced. Or the Warriors get bounced in the first round, and the Heat go to the finals. I will say the Nuggets one is a lot more speculatory, especially because I'm not sure how good De'Aaron Fox would actually improve that roster if we just removed him. But yeah, I think this tier list was very bad because 125 players is crazy. As we've seen in the last slide, this is just too much, bro. Too much players to really accommodate for. And we need to understand that if we're just going to accommodate all these guys, we have to at least understand where we should kind of draw the line between how good some of these players are and how good some of these players are. And Cade Cunningham is on here, which is kind of crazy. If I remember, Cade was around these guys, but he's not here at all. You know what? I'm gonna just leave it at this. Darius Garland, Jared Allen up, Desmond Bane probably up. Everyone from Marcus Smart to Darius Garland should be moved up. Brandon Ingram up, Aiden up, Maxey up. And if we're talking about just like players as a whole, Sexton should probably be not only around here. I'd argue he's somewhere around here. Actually, he's definitely better than Jalen Brunson. He's around here. But that's just me. That's pretty much all I got to say. There may be a short about this later on. But yeah, I'll talk to y'all later. Hopefully, y'all don't have this bad of a list. And if y'all do, I'm catching y'all asses. This is Nehemiah, a.k.a. Neo. And I hope you guys are having a better one than this motherfucker right here.